Hello, and welcome to another episode of Edible RX, the podcast that teaches autoimmune warriors to use anti-inflammatory diet and lifestyle as medicine. I'm Laura Rodriguez, holistic chef, autoimmune warrior, and creator of the Flare Free Academy. And I've been using anti-inflammatory diet and lifestyle to manage the symptoms of my rheumatoid arthritis since 2015. I've reversed a handful of other conditions along the way, but just like anything else in life, my healing journey is not a linear one. I am still working on my health today. So if you're an autoimmune warrior who is interested in lessening inflammation, decreasing the symptoms of your condition, and improving the quality of your life, buckle up because this is the podcast for you. I will be teaching you every week little tips and tricks that you can do to continuously improve your health as an autoimmune warrior. And like I always say, healing starts in the kitchen, so we're always going to talk about food as well. All right, on today's podcast episode, I want to talk about one of the things that I see holding people back from using flare-free food as medicine very often. Now, if you're new here or you need a refresher, flare-free food is gluten, dairy, sugar, corn, soy, peanut-free, and anti-inflammatory comfort food that won't cause autoimmune flare-ups. It's food that you can use at the beginning of your journey or when you come off of AIP or Whole30 or keto or the Walls protocol or any number of ultra restrictive diets that you've tried recently. It's food that I used to cook for cancer patients when I was the executive chef for the Heimerdinger Foundation in Nashville for 3.5 years. It's the same food that I used at the beginning of my healing journey and the same food that hundreds of my clients eat today. All right, so now that we're clear on that, one of the things that I see holding a lot of the people in my community back from using flare-free food as medicine is that they have picky eaters at home. Now, I say picky in quotes because I do believe that most kids aren't born picky, and I have a whole podcast episode about that I will link in the show notes for you so you can go back and listen to that after if you need. But so many of my students are moms, and they're basically letting their kids dictate their healing journey. Okay, which I know it sounds a bit harsh, but it's true. So many moms are coming to me saying they know they need to eat better. Their doctor prescribed them an anti-inflammatory diet, and that's how they originally found me. But they're so sick and they're so tired, they don't have the energy or the willpower or the brain space to be making multiple meals every night. So they'd rather not bother trying to make anything new or anything healthy, even if it just means that they're going to stay sick or get even sicker, right? They'd rather just cook meals that they know their picky eaters are going to eat. And listen, I get it, okay? I work full time. I have a 10-year-old at home. Even though I did raise her to be an adventurous eater from the jump, which I actually think is the easiest way to go about it. So maybe I'll do a podcast episode about that next. But she's no stranger to turning her nose up at something she thinks she doesn't like, even before she's ever tried it. So some of what I'm going to teach you today are concepts that I've learned from child dietitians, but they are all techniques that I've used successfully for my daughter at home. And so I'm really confident that with the right approach and with consistency, these tips will work for you too. All right, so without further ado, here are 8 tips for expanding your family's palate so you can stop cooking multiple meals and start eating flare-free. Number 1, set boundaries around meal times. Okay, you are the parent. It's okay to set boundaries around which foods your family eats and which foods they don't eat, right? Period, point blank, end of sentence. Okay, we're done with that. We do not need to explain that any further. You are not the bad mom just because you insist that your kids eat their nutrients, right? Just like you tell them they can't go to the bathroom without washing their hands afterwards, or they can't throw their dirty clothes on the floor, right? You are allowed to insist that your children eat nutrient-dense foods so they can grow up healthy. Another boundary that I encourage you set is that they are not allowed to eat anything separate from what the rest of the family is eating. Okay, we are no longer making separate meals. They are the child and you are the parent. Okay, so until they start paying for groceries and they start cooking, it's your job to decide what's for dinner. It's their job to eat. Okay, and the last boundary that I encourage you to set is that snacks are snacks, meals are meals, and dessert is dessert. Okay, we're not serving a snack as a meal, and we're not serving a dessert as a snack. Okay. That gives you an easy explanation that you can throw out to them when they start griping about what's on the buffet. All right. Now, before we get into the other 7 tips I have for you, I do want to make one important note. You want to make sure that you approach all of this from a place of love, but that you're firm and that you're consistent. Okay. So you're going to have to repeat a lot of these things that I'm about to teach you over and over and over again until it sticks, right? Just like anything else in parenting. And please feel free to set any other boundaries that you see fit. Okay. Number 2, set boundaries around the language of food. Okay. We're not going to allow our kids to say things like, I don't like this, or that's yucky, or ew, or gross, right? This allows them to form negative thoughts, language, and emotions around food, which later can lead to disordered eating, right? Not only that, but it literally elicits an emotional response from you as the parent cooking the food, right? And the last thing that we need as parents is to be rejected and talked down to by our kids. Okay. We get enough of that from other areas in our life. We do not need it from a toddler or an 8-year-old or a 15-year-old, right? Not only does it not just feel good when someone has a visceral response to a meal that you set in front of them, but it will discourage you from cooking new recipes and trying new ingredients, which is the exact opposite of what we want here. We're talking about expanding our palates, right? And it's totally doable. So kindly but firmly tell them, oh, we don't say ew, honey, or we don't say I don't like that, or whatever the case may be, and just give them an alternative, right? They can say something like, oh, that's not my favorite right now. I wasn't craving that today. I don't care for that, right? You see how I say, oh, I don't care for that sounds so much better than ew, gross, yucky, I don't like this. And then, their body language starts to go down the drain as well. Number 3, get your kids involved in the kitchen. Okay, statistically, kids are more likely to try new foods when they've had a hand in cooking them. So even though it's gonna slow you down and make a big mess, this can be a really easy way to get your kids to try ingredients they've never had before. So start on a weekend, right, with an easy dish and have everything measured out and mise en place for them so that they can just dump and stir, right? We're not gonna make breakfast before getting them off to school in the morning. Okay. We're not going to make a quick dinner before you have to take them to soccer in the evening or something, right? Set it up so that it's as calm as possible and just know they're going to make a mess. They're going to have 1,000 questions. They're going to do it wrong. It's okay. It's not about being perfect. It's just about letting them help. Okay. Number 4, serve your meals family style and encourage them to take a little bit of everything off the buffet. Okay, so this gives them the autonomy about how much of everything they put on their plate, which in turn lessens the anxiety and frustration that they'll have about eating something they don't like, right? Now remember, you have to try something upwards of 21 times in order to like it. So just like building a new habit, changing your taste buds takes time, but it is totally possible. So that's why it's important to encourage them to keep trying it and trying it and trying. Just tell them it takes about 21 times before you can like something, honey. So just give it another bite, right? We're going to talk about that in a second here. But, I grew up refusing to eat a ton of different things, like delicious things like strawberries. I didn't like pineapple, cantaloupe, oranges, the list goes on and on. And my daughter has a set of things that she, refused to eat when she was younger: mushrooms, egg yolks, fish, right? And we both eat all of these things today. So changing your taste buds is possible. You just don't know if you like something if you haven't tried it, right? And that's what's so important, to just continue to encourage them to take a little bit of everything on the buffet so they have something to try 21 times. And you could even make a little game out of it, like keep a tally of every time your family member tries a specific food and then reward them with a little prize or an experience or something once they reach their 21st try, right? And so if they get to the 22nd try and they really don't like it, then they don't like it. That's fine, right? We're allowed to have our food preferences, right? My husband loves octopus. It's something I really don't eat. You know what I mean? And so it's it's not that I haven't tried it. It's just not my favorite texture. So it's just not something I normally eat very often. And that's okay, right? But we want to get to that 21 try threshold. So if you want to make a game out of it, that's even better. Number 5, Serve safe foods with each meal. So for every new ingredient that you introduce, make sure you try to serve something that you know that they like, right? Because kids are going to be more likely to try new things if there's something on the buffet that they're familiar with. Shout out to my student Kayla who shared that tip with me. I love that tip. Number 6, encourage your child to try everything on their plate once. Okay. You want to use this specific language every time they push back, and you want to be calm, but you want to be firm and matter of fact, and you want to be consistent. You want to use this language over and over and over again. You can have as much or as little as you'd like, honey, but you have to try everything once. Okay. You will be surprised by how many times you have to remind them of this. I still have to remind my daughter of this all the time. Okay. If there's something new, I served a Korean potato salad the other day and she's like, is there egg in this? Right. I did boiled eggs with the egg yolk and everything. And she didn't say anything to me about it. Right. But afterwards, she was like, I thought I wasn't going to like this because of the egg yolks, but boy, was I wrong. But it has taken a lot of having to say this over and over again so that she gets to a point where subconsciously she knows I'm just going to try it anyway. I already know what my mom's going to say at this point. So what's the point of me even like saying anything out loud about how I don't think I'm going to like this, right? So they don't have to eat everything on their plate, right? This is not the 80s. This is not the 50s, right? That type of like sit at the dinner table until your plate is empty. We're not doing that, okay? They do not have to eat everything on their plate, but they have to try everything once. They can literally spit it out if they don't like it, right? In a respectful way. Spit it in a napkin, throw it in the trash. They don't need to spit it all over the plate and ruin the meal and say, oh, that's disgusting. And no, we're staying calm. They can calmly spit it out in a napkin and throw it in the trash, right? So you need to stay calm as well. So you stay calm, talk with as little inflection as possible, be very matter of fact, and just repeat the same thing over and over again. You don't have to eat everything on your plate, honey, but you have to try everything once. What you want to go out of your way not to do is let out a big sigh, right? Oh, have an outburst. Oh, why don't you, right? Ask them why they're so difficult. Whine about how they're picky, right? Complain about how they don't eat enough, right? Just very matter of factly say these exact words. You don't have to eat everything on your plate. You can have as much or as little as you'd like, but you have to try everything once. You can spit out anything you don't like, but you have to try everything once, and you can eat as much or as little as you'd like. Okay? You see how that gives them autonomy over their meal? So now they have the autonomy to choose exactly how much of everything they put on their plate. And now they have the autonomy of how much they eat what's on their plate. Okay, I just got chills just saying that out loud because it changes the dynamic of the eating of meal times tremendously. So if they don't like something now, it's their problem. It's not your problem. Your job is to provide your family with healthy meals and to provide them with multiple options of what they can eat, right? That's why I love the buffet idea. They get to choose what goes on their plate. They get to choose how much of everything they eat. So if they're hungry at the end of the meal, that is not your problem. You provided them with safe foods, right? They could fill up on white rice if they wanted to. They had to have a bite of the spinach. They had to have a bite of the chicken. They had to have a bite of the bell peppers, whatever, the salad, okay, whatever you put on the plate or on the buffet, I'm sorry. They could just eat white rice until they're full. So there's no more, I'm hungry, I'm starving, I need a snack after this, right? Which brings me to my next point. You want to be very clear about what the consequences are of not eating at mealtimes or not eating enough at mealtimes, right? So if they choose to only eat a small amount of 1 to 2 things on the buffet, right? They only have a few bites of rice and a 1 bite of chicken. They have a bite of everything else, but they don't really eat anything else. Okay, now this goes back to setting, those initial boundaries around meal times. You want to use this specific language to set this boundary around what happens next, right? You want to tell them what their consequence is if they only choose to eat a couple. Because here's the thing. When you start rolling out these new concepts, they might push back, right? And they might think, oh, well, I'm just going to tell my mom that I'm starving and I'm not going to eat any of this. Even though they love rice and chicken and they just eat a couple bites of that, right? And they say they're starving afterwards. Number one, they're not starving. Okay. Number two, they're just trying to push your buttons and see how far they can take this, right? They're trying to have the upper hand in this situation, which they're not going to get the upper hand. You're the parent, right? So you're going to set the boundary that you can eat as much or as little as you'd like, but the next time we're going to eat isn't until dinner time. The next time we're going to eat isn't until lunchtime. Or if they're young enough and they still have designated snack times, which we have snack time at 10 a.m. and 3 p.m., I highly suggest you actually schedule snack time so they're not constantly eating snacks whenever they want to. So it's, you can eat as much or as little as you'd like, but the next time we're going to eat isn't going to be until dinner time. So this is all we have to eat right now. And you can literally say it's not going to be until dinner time at 6 p.m. and then show them the clock. Okay. So it's 12 o'clock right now. The next time we eat isn't going to be until dinner time. So you'll have 6 hours, right, before we eat again. Or the next time we eat isn't going to be until snack time at 3 p.m. So you'll have 3 hours. So why don't you go ahead and fill up your belly with whatever it is that you like on your plate, right? Now, if they're only taking very small amounts of like the super carby foods, or, they're barely touching their vegetables, there's not really much they like other than like the rice, right? You want to make sure that you are preparing for them a healthy snack at their snack time, right? And you don't have to say this out loud. You just want to make sure that subconsciously you are putting out for them hummus and carrots, apples and peanut butter, cucumbers and ranch dip, whatever it is, versus handing them a bag of chips or, whatever other packaged, processed snacks you have for them. Now, keeping in mind that this is not a punishment for them, right? It's just that we want to make sure as parents, we are caring for them properly and that we are ensuring that they are getting the proper amount of nutrients every day. So if they have consciously decided to forego their intake of nutrients at mealtime, right? They only chose to eat the white rice on the plate. Now you, as a parent, have to consciously make a decision to serve them nutrients at snack time. Does that make sense? So whatever fresh snacks they like, make sure you have those on hand as well before you start implementing these strategies, okay? All right, just one last note about this, or I guess a couple more notes. Again, we're not here to punish them for their food choices. We're not punishing them for only eating white rice, okay? Because that does not encourage adventurous eating, right? If they fuss over the cucumbers and ranch, just gently but firmly say, this is what we have to eat for snack right now. You can eat as much or as little as you'd like, but the next time we're going to eat isn't until dinner time at 6 p.m. You see how when you repeat it and you give them the information, they get to take from it what they would like, okay? So it's the same concept at every meal or every snack time. Just wanting to make sure that if they decide to only eat like the super, if they only eat the pasta and they don't eat the salad, if they only eat the mashed potatoes, but they don't eat whatever, the meatloaf, then you want to make sure that you are adding in nutrients at those snack times as well. Okay. And don't mention it to them because we don't want them to feel like they're being punished because they did what we told them to do. They ate as much or as little of anything that they would like on their plate. But it's not okay for us to let them go from eating white rice to a granola bar, okay? Because allowing our kids to constantly graze on ultra processed packaged snacks all day is only feeding their selective eating, okay? When you, and this goes for adults as well, when you have constant access all day to highly processed packaged foods, those foods are highly addictive, right? Not only the hidden addictive food additives that they put in those packaged snacks to get you to continue buying them, but also the high sodium levels, right? The high sugar content, the ultra crunchy, crispy textures, right? All of these things set off the pleasure receptors in our brains, and we literally produce serotonin and dopamine every time we eat them. So giving them full access to these types of food any time of day or anytime they don't like a meal is only helping them to be picky, right? So they're not allowed to go from eating very little on their plate to just turning around and grabbing something out of the pantry and having a snack. They have to wait until snack time, and snack time will be a fresh snack. So you see how we're setting these boundaries around food, and when we set these parameters, that will over time encourage them to actually find something that they like on their plate. Because let me tell you, they're going to want that packaged snack eventually. They're going to catch on. Oh, mom served me carrots and ranch dip again. When am I going to get my, my pirate's booty again? Right? So they're going to catch on. And so again, we're not going to acknowledge like, oh, well, you only ate rice, so I'm making you a fresh snack. We're not going to do that because we don't want to punish them for their choices. They did what we told them to do, which was to eat as much or as little of anything they wanted on their plate, right? But we are going to sneak in those nutrients at snack time. Okay, so don't be afraid to enforce these boundaries and repeat the message over and over again until it gets through to them. They can have as much or as little as they would like, but the next time we're going to eat isn't going to be until XYZ time. Okay, they are not going to starve. Okay, I promise you, they will tell you that they're starving and they will throw a fuss. This is the hardest thing about it. It's like, this stuff works, but your child is going to push back. They're going to throw themselves on the floor. They're going to throw a tantrum. They're going to cry. They're going to stomp, right? Let them do that. It's okay, right? It's okay to have big feelings, but that doesn't change these boundaries that I've set around meal times now. Okay. It doesn't change what we're having for snack. Okay. All right. Now, the last and final tip that I have for you is an optional one. But I think, especially with what we just talked about with the tantrums and the throwing your body on the ground and stomping and crying and telling you that you're starving, they're not starving. Okay. They're just trying to get trying to rile you up and get their way, right? But one thing that you can do to try to circumvent all of those big feelings is to set up a reward system if necessary. Okay. Now, I'm not talking about a reward system for how good they eat, right? Or because they ate the good foods or whatever, right? We don't want to label foods as good or bad. We don't want to label kids as good eaters or bad eaters, right? Because we don't want to encourage disordered eating to develop over time, right? So, what we can do instead, okay, and this is a big one, is we can set up a reward system for good listening. Okay, so here's what we do in our family. We get a Ziploc bag of pom-poms, those little like soft, they look like my microphone cover, right? Those little like pom-poms that you use for crafts. They're like fluffy and colorful. And we get a mason jar. Okay, so every time our daughter listens to the boundaries, the rules, whatever system we have set up around mealtime, and she does what we ask her to do, she gets to put a pom-pom in the jar. Okay, so it's not about if you eat everything on your plate, if you eat your broccoli, if you eat your salad, you get to put a pom-pom in the jar. No, it's not like that. Okay, it's thank you for putting a little bit of everything on your plate. Please go put a pom-pom in the jar. Thank you for trying one bite of everything. Please go put a pom-pom in the jar. Thank you for using kind language at dinner time. Please go put a pom-pom in the jar. Right? And then when the jar is full, she gets to pick out a present or an experience of her choosing, right? So depending on your child's love language, if they love getting gifts, you can offer them maybe $30 to spend at the toy store, or you can buy them a gift. If your child's love language is, spending time with you guys, then you can offer maybe like a movie night with dad, or a zoo trip, or a girls' day with mommy, or whatever they like. Okay. So feel free to customize the prize and everything for your child. Feel free to customize, if you have marbles at home and you want to put them in a plastic container, like by all means, please do. But what we want to make sure that we don't do in this instance is reward them with food, right? So it's not fill up this jar and I'll take you out for ice cream. It's not fill up the jar with pom-poms and you can pick out whatever snacks you like at the store, right? It's not fill up this jar and you can order dessert at the restaurant. Okay, so just like we are careful to not use good and bad language around food and, big emotions around food, we should also be careful not to reward our kids with good behavior with food. Okay, they get enough of that with the grandparents and at school and everything else, okay? Because again, these types of things can lead to disordered eating later on in life, right? Emotional eating, stress eating, binge eating, you name it. All right. So let's recap really quickly because I just threw out a lot for you, and I hope that you guys will be able to implement some of these things as soon as possible. The key to it is to really be consistent and to be calm. Okay. So here are my 8 tips for expanding your family's palate so you can all get on board with eating flare free and you can put an end to the short order cooking, multiple meals for multiple food preferences in one household, right? Number 1, set boundaries around meal times, right? Number 2, set boundaries around the language of food. Number 3, get your kids involved in the kitchen. Number 4, serve your meals family style and encourage your family to take a little bit of everything on their plate. Number 5, serve safe foods with each meal. Number 6, encourage your child to eat a bite of everything on their plate once. Just one bite. They can spit it out if they don't like it. That's fine. But they have to try everything once. And if you wanted to keep a log to see how many times has he tried spinach, oh, he's tried it 21 times and he still doesn't like it. Okay, that's on my food preferences list. That's the list of something he doesn't like. Okay. Be very clear on the consequences of what happens when we don't eat at meal times. Okay, we are not turning around and grabbing a bag of chips because you didn't like what I served on the buffet. Okay, the next time we're eating isn't going to be until XYZ time. And don't forget, if they choose to eat very little nutrients, you want to make sure that the next meal is super nutrient rich. So if your kids are older and they don't have snack times, then you want to make sure that maybe you're serving them their favorite soup, right? Or something else that you can easily sneak vegetables in, right? So that it's nutrient dense and it's not pasta. Now, a couple other notes. If your spouse is also a picky eater, you want to make sure to ask them to follow along with everything that you are implementing with the kids, okay? Your spouse is not allowed to use negative language around food and say things are yucky and ew and gross and I don't like that, and to poo-poo your meals and or your efforts to implement these strategies if you really want this to work, okay? So if they are not willing to try any of these strategies on themselves, at the bare minimum, what they must do is stay quiet and not combat you while you're trying to implement these strategies. Okay, you both have to be a team, and the messaging has to be consistent for any of this to work. The messaging, the energy, okay, they can't be stomping their feet and throwing a fuss and being grumpy and being rude when you're asking the kids not to do that, okay? Now, lastly, if you are the picky eater in the house, okay, you have to ask yourself, am I willing to give up the foods that make me sick? Because what's harder, giving up the foods that make you sick or getting sicker, right? Because the data is there. Okay, your kids may not be sick right now, but chronic inflammation is responsible for more than 50% of all deaths worldwide. Okay, and if you have autoimmunity, you have chronic inflammation. And embracing an anti-inflammatory diet is the number one way to lessen chronic inflammation and decrease the risk of death by heart disease, diabetes, autoimmunity, obesity, etc. So not only do you have to think about this for yourself, right? Eating anti-inflammatory is the number one way to lessen the symptoms of autoimmunity and lessen chronic inflammation, okay? Which ultimately, if you don't get a handle on it, will lead to death. It's the cause of more than 50% of deaths worldwide. So this is not, I'm not trying to be glum here. I'm just literally stating a fact, okay? And the other part is, if we don't get our kids on board with eating anti-inflammatory, they're going to end up with autoimmunity or diabetes or heart disease or obesity or whatever, right? So it's very important that you start now, that you don't wait until you've gotten a second autoimmune diagnosis, until you've gotten a third compounding diagnosis, until you get diabetes. It's not worth waiting. Start now, start today, okay? And don't let your kids or the other picky eaters in your family be the reason why you don't start, because there are so many things that you can do to expand your family's palate, and that's what we're talking about here today. Okay, and by the way, one thing I haven't mentioned yet is when you're doing this, okay, you want to start by serving foods that you and your family are familiar with, right? The easiest way to embrace an anti-inflammatory diet is not to try to make yourself love anti-inflammatory foods, but rather make the foods that you love anti-inflammatory. So rather than trying to make yourself love wild salmon with organic brown rice and steamed broccoli, right? Try making gluten, dairy, sugar, corn, soy, peanut-free and anti-inflammatory versions of your favorite foods. So lasagna, pasta, pizza, burgers, chicken noodle soup, mashed potatoes, enchiladas, tacos, etc. Okay? They're going to see the gluten-free pasta and they might turn their nose up at it, right? When they take a first bite of it, but at least they've taken a first bite of it. Now they only have 20 more bites of gluten-free pasta to go. That's going to be way easier than saying, let me get you to take 21 bites of salmon when they're going from eating pizza rolls, mac and cheese, chicken nuggets, and fast food all the time, right? You can't go from eating the standard American diet to eating salmon and broccoli. It's not a sustainable transition. So instead, make the foods that you know they love anti-inflammatory because they're going to taste different, right? Vegan cheese does not taste like real cheese. Now, if you slather it with a sauce and you cook it with enchilada sauce, it's very close, okay? I don't get a lot of complaints. I don't get any complaints, honestly, from my clients about throwing vegan cheese on a casserole, right? It's the best way to introduce it. Now, if I were to try to give somebody a piece of raw, uncooked vegan cheese and eat it on a charcuterie board, they're going to know the difference, okay? So start with foods that they like, okay? Because if they're ultra picky, they're going to go, oh, I don't like this because it has almond milk in it, right? They're going to taste different than the regular milk in the mashed potatoes. But this is the best way to start, okay? I promise you. Whatever you like, there is a way to make it flare-free. Okay, I've written over 500 recipes inside my courses. There's tons of recipes that you can get for free on my blog, on my website. Okay, so it's possible. I promise you. I've done it, and I do it every day for my clients. Now, if you absolutely hate vegetables, okay, try sneaking vegetables into as many meals as humanly possible, right? So meatloaf, mashed potatoes, meatballs, soups, stews, pasta sauces. These are all great vehicles for hiding vegetables, okay? So start there. You got this. You can do it. You just have to believe in your ability to make it happen. Believe in the possibility of a healthier you, and honestly, just give it a shot. Tasting is believing, right? So if you need recipes, head to cheflaurarodriguez.com/free meal plan and download my free quick cooking family friendly dinners meal plan and get started. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Edible RX, the podcast that helps autoimmune warriors use anti-inflammatory diet and lifestyle as medicine. If you found this episode helpful, do me a favor, please. Can you leave me a rating and a review on iTunes? I'm going to link that in the show notes for you as well. So it's super easy for you. It would mean the world to me because it would help the podcast reach more autoimmune warriors who are struggling with the debilitating symptoms of their condition and don't yet know that making these little diet and lifestyle changes can really help transform their life. Again, guys, healing is possible. You just need the right tools, resources, guidance, and support to make it happen. And that's what this podcast is all about. So if it's on your heart to pay it forward, please leave me a rating and review at the link in the show notes on iTunes so you can help me reach more autoimmune warriors who are looking to heal from within, because you know what it's like when you got that first diagnosis. You know what it feels like to be hopeless and to feel helpless and feel like you're the only one sick in your family and nobody knows what you're going through. So it's very important for us as autoimmune warriors to surround ourselves with people who have had success, with people who are using food as medicine today and who have decreased the symptoms of their condition, right? Their ANA went down, their CRP numbers went down, they're feeling better, right? This is so important because otherwise your doctor's going to tell you that there's nothing you can do. You just have to take your medicine and basically deal with the symptoms, right? Right? Autoimmunity is forever, right? Even if we were to reverse our condition, right? And our labs came back and we had no more ANA and our CRP was within normal ranges, right? We can't go back to eating McDonald's because we'll get our disease again, right? So this is a lifestyle change. This is a forever change. And so these are big concepts, right? And big changes. And so it's important to start small. And that's what this podcast is all about. All right, guys, thank you so much. This is, that's everything for today. I'm Laura Rodriguez, holistic chef, autoimmune warrior, and creator of the Flare Free Academy. Until next time, guys, eat your damn vegetables. Bye.